Welcome to this page where I'm going to teach you and summarize this article for you about foot reflexology. Please note that you can really get into the weeds when you start getting into reflexology and all the different pressure points and types of reflexology. So I'm going to keep this really simple because that's what most people want. They're not, interested in digging up all these details. It can just be overwhelming. So first of all, foot reflexology is a really time-honored, secure, and remarkable healing practice, and it's really easy to execute. Again, we're not going to get into all the weeds here. This article is going to provide you with some general advice and details about reflexology, and I am going to ask you to read it when we're done because I'm only going to summarize some information for you at this time. If this information does feel like too much, just massage your feet. That's it. Trust your intuition and you'll achieve positive outcomes without being concerned about getting too specific. Now, here are some safety tips that I'm going to share concerning foot reflexology. A session of reflexology, as I go through here, I'll go down through some of this information. Just remember that you're going to go through here and read through this in its entirety. It is a pretty long article. And trust me, it's a very little piece of what uh, I actually cut this article back a lot just to make it even understandable. But anyway, a typical session should last 10 to 15 minutes, and it's not advisable to go on beyond 30 minutes per session. Now, when I go to a place called Happy Feet, where they rub your feet and give you foot reflexology, they do a quick, it's an hour session. They do 15 minutes while you're sitting in the chair before they sit you down to do the feet. So they're like working on your back and your neck and shoulders and whatever. And then they work on the feet for probably a little over 30 minutes, and I'm fine with that. And then end with just, they're also moving up on a little bit on the calf area, that part of the leg. So it's fine, but you don't need to go over especially an intense session, focusing maybe on some really big pressure points for certainly not over 30 minutes. It's beneficial to massage parts that are painful and sore because that's usually where you have either a weak organ or something going on that actually needs to be addressed. So it may be a little bit sensitive. You might want to use a little bit less pressure, but that is actually a really good idea to work on those areas. It's also just be patient when you're doing that. Foot reflexology can be practiced once or twice daily when time's allowed, but most of us aren't going to have 30 minutes a day to work on this. So there are other things you can do as well. We'll talk about that in a moment. You want to ensure that you're using any reflexology tools that are blunt, nothing sharp or pokey necessarily. Now, I have a little ball that has little pokey pieces on it, and that's okay, but they're obviously not sharp. But I do roll those under my feet at times. Foot reflexology is highly efficient, safe, and healing technique. It's straightforward to perform, and it doesn't require any kind of formal education. Professionals provide this service in most cities. Again, I go to a place pretty not as regularly as I would like, but I do go to a place that's local here. Furthermore, you can simply roll a tennis ball under your feet while you're sitting at a desk or working at your job. And so when you don't have time to sit down and rub your feet, that's a quick way to get some foot reflexology into your life. Now, there are different benefits of different kinds of foot reflexology, actually, what we call emergency reflexology, where you work on various pressure points that have to do with some kind of issue that you are, experiencing, like if you're having a heart attack or a stroke. Now, most people aren't going to think about doing reflexology at this point, but there are pressure points you can work on. And once you have a chart, you could look those up, and that would be an emergency type of foot reflexology. You can work on chronic health issues where you're actually looking at fixing things like constipation or pain, those kind of things that are more serious ailments even. Acute health conditions, like if you do have an accident, an injury, a toothache, or other acute issues can be addressed through some reflexology. Toxin removal or elimination is really helpful because as you are working on opening up the pathways, using reflexology, opening up the meridians, you many times will enhance detoxification, which can be really helpful, especially for many of my clients who are kind of stuck and have a problem detoxing. So that can be very helpful. If you're doing foot reflexology with your children, it can be a very loving and kind way to connect with the child as you're just rubbing their feet while they maybe don't feel, and sometimes even when they don't feel good, but even when they do, like at night before they go to bed, it does provide a great way to connect with your children. And it's also great for elderly people and seniors. And pretty much really, who doesn't like to have their feet rubbed if you actually have the benefit of having someone else do it? Now, typically a lot of times we're rubbing our own feet and finding our own reflexology points, and that's fine too. But it really does feel really well to have, really great to have someone else rub your feet. Now you will note that on this page, and you can go to these at any time. Right now, I'm gonna just show you the foot chart. It's still loading right here, so I'm giving it a moment. But there are a couple diagrams on this page that you can actually look at a foot chart, and that helps you understand where different foot reflexology points are. So like when I was mentioning, if you're having heart issues or heart palpitations right over here on the outside of the foot, you would look at that. Now that would be, you're looking at the feet. You want to think about what foot you're looking at here if you were standing there. So that would be the right foot. And you can see there that that relates to the heart. And a lot of the foot, if you just think about it at the way the body's organized, the head and the brain and the eyes, all those areas are up here at the top of the foot. And then as you move down, you get into the middle of the foot, which would be your lung, your esophagus, all these areas in the center, even your stomach right here, right in the center as well. And then you get down to where you're into the intestines, the colon, those areas as well. So that's very helpful to just be able to look at that chart. And you can look at that if you are, because if you're working on your feet and you're having pain, you might wonder, well, what's that pain? Where's that coming from? So it can be really helpful to be able to understand as you're working on your body where and what is maybe, you know, uh, where you're having pain or why you're having pain. So here's a little bit of I like this chart a little bit better actually, but the same thing. You got everything up here at the top from the thyroid right here. So you can just kind of find that area if you need, or you have thyroid issues, pancreas issues right here. You can see where the colon is. And as again, you're moving down the body. You can also see where, when we get down here to the bottom, you see the top of the foot. So you can get an idea where some lymph is right here. And this is also very helpful as well. So you can look at that. It just gives you a little bit of a help, a little bit of information, feedback if you are feeling something really sore. So, often if I'm having some kind of stomach issue right here, then when I'm in this area, it's sore, or if you're having gas or bloating, you might feel it down here in the colon, and you can understand, maybe the gallbladder, whatever, that maybe you're having digestive issues at that time. Now, getting started, again, those charts do help you if you want to even print them and keep them. You can also buy many charts that you can print or keep and keep them around for your ease of, having them on hand. Guidelines, you want to be very comfortable when you're doing foot reflexology. You want to let your body relax, taking very deep breaths. You want to make sure that you are hydrated. So you want to make sure that you have hydrated yourself. If you're hungry, you want to make sure you eat something. You just don't want to really be distracted here. If there's another person providing the session for you, you need to communicate for them to them. Let them know if the pressure is too hard, too soft, whatever. You need to be familiar with familiarize yourself with unconventional areas to massage, like the edges and tops of the toes, gaps between the toes, and those areas can even often be quite sensitive. Again, about 10 to 20 minutes on each foot or hand. Usually feet are really, really comfortable, or I prefer feet over hand, but either would work. In fact, when I do have any kind of headache, I like that space between my thumb and my index finger, right where you have that webbing right there. If you push on that area when you have a headache, often the headache will go away. Okay, so that is that much. We are now going to move on. I'm going to move on here a bit. You could soak your feet in warm water before starting your session. That is something they do when you go to a place to get reflexology. It does help you relax, and that can be very, very soothing as well. You could also use a little bit of coconut oil. Well, it says almond oil here. I prefer coconut oil or something that makes that a little more comfortable, but just use that in very sparingly, because obviously if the feet are real slippery, they're going to be harder to manage, whether you or someone else or is doing the reflexology. Um, the tools that you can use, there are rubber and wooden rollers, balls designed to be rolled under the feet, as I just talked about, and other implements. If you just even did a search, you would see different reflexology tools that you might want to use on your feet. So there are a couple different kinds, two distinct methods of reflexology. One is just a relaxing or general session. You're just working generally on both feet, applying, some firm pressure, moving across and through tender spots, and maybe working a little more into those tension or tense spots as well, again, for 10 to 20 minutes on each foot. Then there is what we also call spot therapy. And on spot therapy, you would then, and you can make sure, again, read through all of this because there's a lot more direction here that's really helpful to understand. But again, this is a summary, so I want to keep it pretty general. But that spot therapy where you're going to focus on an organ or a gland, where you know that you're having trouble with your liver or thyroid or whatever it is, and you're actually going to focus on that area. It even talks here about relieving a headache by rubbing those areas on the feet. I just mentioned the hand because sometimes if I'm sitting or doing things and I have a headache, I'll just rub my hand in that area, and it's just easier to do at that moment than actually working on the feet. But you can certainly do that by moving to the feet as well. And so that would be more of a spot therapy session. Again, it might be uncomfortable, but you really don't want to cause any kind of severe pain. So that could uh, cause even bruising sometimes. So be really careful with that as well. Now, the sequence isn't really essential, like what order you go in. So you can move through whatever you feel comfortable with. It doesn't matter if you start with the left or right foot or any of that. It's all, again, it just doesn't, you don't need to get into a whole bunch of details or try to make this harder than it needs to be. You want to apply firm pressure that's enough to elicit some slight discomfort. Again, that discomfort is really working into many times organs and tissues that need work. And you'll start to feel that ease up if you do regular tension or sessions where you won't feel as much tension in those areas. And so that focus therapy that you're doing, again, is targeting certain areas of the body, which you may be trying to alleviate some kind of illness or discomfort. And then that would help you with a spot therapy or focus therapy. So that's a great solution for various headaches, back pains, and even infections that you might have. That would be really helpful. So please read through this entire article. It is very intense, so it does get to be overwhelming sometimes if you're trying to be too professional or, specific about it. And that's why at the end of the day, I always say it is really cool to learn more about reflexology. And I find it very, very interesting. So I've done a lot of research and delved into a lot of different reflexology techniques and ways to do reflexology. But at the very, very least, you can just rub the feet. So if you have any questions about anything or you are experiencing anything when you're working with reflexology, you can always let me know and I'd be glad to help you figure out if you need to change something you're doing or maybe even figure out what might be going on that's causing you any kind of discomfort. And hopefully you will be able to use some foot reflexology with your mineral balancing program. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, reach out to me at Holistic Wellness from Within. My website is holisticlifestyleconsulting.com, and thanks for viewing.